Yeah, I hope. Okay, now I think it has started recording. And however, I'll still be able to share with you whatever presentation I have, and also a list that will be able to guide you in which groups you will be in, who will be supervising you for this case. And I think based on those, I think we'll be able to move forward smoothly. So uh, once again, thank you for coming for this and for making time for this session. So at KSG, I think as part of your program, you need to be able to do some research. And the research project is merely not only because it is examinable, but it is also there so that you're also able to remind yourselves of how do you make subsequent decisions, especially within your workspace or within the public service space or in terms of public policy. How are you able to make informed decisions? Because in most cases, we find ourselves in certain situations where there is this activities or this phenomena that are occurring. And even as they occur, then we really try as much as possible to uh, better understand them before we are able to make decisions. So the research I'm sure you'll do within your workspaces, not this specific one, are at times for long-term policy gains, at times to be able to also address immediate needs in terms of practice and policy, but also at times just to have a better understanding of actual situations and be able to respond to them in a timely and a justified manner. So uh, this session is not supposed to be too long, but perhaps would take roughly 30 minutes or even less. And after that, you will get an opportunity to share and meet your supervisors so that you'll be able to continue with the process from here henceforth. So just to remind ourselves, of course, research is a point of making an inquiry. It is a process, and you make an inquiry and investigate as to why certain phenomena occur the way they do. We need to remember that it is systematic and takes a particular methodology to be able to achieve the desired results or to make this inquiry. During which, anytime you're doing your research, this has to be done in an ethical way where certain ethical considerations should and could be done so that even those you're collecting your data from do not end up being implicated or impacted on by your results or your data's collection processes. I think you have seen in certain situations where there are these communities you're collecting data perhaps from, but this data is so sensitive to the extent that even as you leave that place, uh, depending on how you actually collected your data, or you informed that community about the information you want to collect from them or your activities or processes, this community is left wondering if an intervention is actually meant to help them or is actually going to impact on them negatively. So I can give you a very good example of there's a community in Kisumu, which I think that's in terms of ethics, which I think at one particular time there was a lot of data that this community had been subjected to in terms of people coming there and collecting a lot of information about their social health, about their health status, and this touched on a lot of very sensitive issues like HIV, for example. So it reached a time when anybody who went back to that community to collect data were not able to get subsequently good data or rich data, and there was a lot of apathy in terms of even those people wanting to respond to any program related to the same set of information that had been collected from them. And looking at a good example of some of those ethical things is like this community, people used to give them money to be able to respond to their queries. So something many NGOs do, like you're given a sitting allowance, you're given some transport allowance so that you're able to participate in a research process. So this community became dependent on any institution which needed to collect, or any persons who needed to collect data from them. So even as much as people gave them money to collect data from them, if you did not have any money to give to them, then the kind of information they would give you would be somehow skewed. But also the reverse happened, that even those who gave them information, who gave them money, also got access to data which at times could not be verified, because these communities wanted to please whoever it is that gave the most amount of money. So they would tell you aspects about the community that were not true in some cases, or could not be validated in some cases, or would even hype situations, especially when they discovered that this data was being used for development projects. But all this could be tied to ethical reasons. And when you're looking at ethical considerations for doing research, it takes the whole research cycle, all the way from when you sit down to think about a research activity, when you actually design your questionnaires or your processes and methods to be able to collect this data, because the kind of ethical considerations you make for clinical data collection is different from that you do for public inquiry or public policy, and could also be very different dependent on who your subject are. If you're collecting data from children, if you're collecting data from the elderly, if you're collecting data from people, from persons living with disability, then certain ethical considerations have to be put in place. So uh, even in our description, then we would actually say that research is the process of inquiry and investigation. It is systematic, methodological, it is ethical, and research can help solve practical problems and as well as increase knowledge. So in some cases, we collect data for research or undertake research to just sort out societal problems or even better understand them. But in some cases, it's also just to get a better understanding of who is it that you are investigating about. Why is this phenomenon occurring the way in which, at what time, where, and for which reasons? And you just want to get an insight into those. So I believe even in your own jurisdictions, you apply different contexts of research and different methodologies based on how and where you work and for whichever reasons. So there are different types of research here. We have descriptive research, which in some cases is perceived to be a fact-finding investigation, which is aimed at describing characteristics of individuals, a situation, or a group. So what happens here is that even as you're trying to undertake your research, you're trying to better understand why is it that an individual perceived to be, let's say, John, why does John, why do we perceive John the way he is? Why does John always behave in a particular way? And what are some of the triggers around why John behaves the way John behaves? So it is merely just trying to have a description about who is John, what constitutes of John, why John behaves the way he does and occurs the way he does, as one of those examples. So you'll get that people want to use different types of research. People talk about different research methodology. Some would be more analytical, whereby you're talking about testing of things like hypotheses, trying to establish the relationships between two different variables, and you're trying to understand why is it that if I am to, for example, how do you put it? If I am to subject the same John we referred to a particular environment, how would John react in relation to that environment? So essentially what you're trying to do is to understand relationships here, whereby you're looking at what are the facts, what are the facts that you have, and how does this particular phenomenon, or how is it influenced by some of the other parameters that are there. A good example is if you're looking at an issue to do with, let's say we are looking at, how do you call it? We're looking at the relationship between you are in one class. However, within this classroom setup, we have both different sets of gender. And gender in this case is in terms of male and female and how they interact with each other. So you find that in a situation where you reduce the number of men in that particular population, then you get that there is a particular correlating behavior in terms of perhaps performance of the other female gender in terms of classwork. So somebody would ask that, is there, if we are to introduce more male, what is the relationship between that and academic performance of this particular group? And you trying to query this then allows you to do some deep analytical research to better understand what is the cause, what is the effects of some of these parameters, if they are introduced, if they are reduced, who influences what, how do these relationships exist. And this is not only about it's not only about the variables, but also being able to understand the different methods that we use to be able to come up with some of these solutions. So we also have applied research, and this is what we expect from you, more or less. And applied research can also be called action research, which we use to attempt to solve real-life phenomena or problems, even as they occur. But this is mostly because we want to either come up with a good decision, or we want to come up with an activity that is better placed to address some of our societal needs. So at times we found ourselves in this policy space. And I tend to think that this is the kind of research that we anticipate to see at the end of your work, because most of you are practitioners. So we are not going to rely heavily on research that is deemed to be more academic, but one that actually provides solutions to real life situations that are there, and in the policy space or in the human environment space as it is. So at times you also hear people talking about we have fundamental research or basic or pure research, which is mostly undertaken with no intention of applying it in practice. And this is what in some cases we find ourselves, especially in the academic world, in the universities, where you just trying to understand a phenomenon, but not necessarily being able to convert that into actual practice or improve any decisions or be able to come up with any tangible outcomes or projects, but merely to understand that situation. An almost good example is if you remember the story about the gentleman who discovered gravity. He documented this. However, it was based on his observation, but that does not mean that nobody had ever observed the aspects of gravity before. But he documented this, something that merely later on in the then past events was now used to actually solve problems. So even as some of us will end up looking as though they are fundamental research here, we hope that they will be able to cure future or give interventions to future occurrences that we have, especially in the public space. So another one would be quantitative and also qualitative research. And anytime we're talking about quantitative research, of course, we're talking about measuring of quantities and how much in terms of numbers does a particular phenomenon occur. And this is usually subjected to statistical analysis so that we are able to get an understanding of what certain figures mean. So you hear at times somebody would ask you, now we have in this class, for example, we have 60% who are female and 40% are male. And of this 40% who are male, perhaps we have 2% dressed in blue, for example. And of the 2%, maybe we have 1% who are putting on spectacles. So these are just merely figures which try to describe that population as it is and how it occurs. However, somebody would ask you, fine, you told us that 60% were male and 40% were female. So what? So to better able to understand what those figures really mean, at times we need to have a lot of qualitative research, which of course tries to add or qualify those figures. So you find yourself in a situation where you see a questionnaire, somebody asks you how many male or female were in this class, and of course we've said there were 60% male and 40% were female. To be able to better understand these figures, then somebody would ask you a question like, please give a response to yes or no above, or a description of why those numbers occur the way they do. So during that time, you have to do a lot of qualitative research, and in most cases, you find that people talk about a mixed methods research, whereby they talk about a combination of both qualitative and quantitative methods to be able to better understand certain situations. So qualitative in most cases is also perceived to be the non-quantitative type of analysis, which is aimed at finding out the quality of a particular phenomenon as described. And this helps you better understand certain aspects of a given population in the way they occur, and to better understand or get more rich in-depth data which describes that population as it is. And when I talk about a population, I'm talking about the subject in which you're trying to understand, or you're trying to examine or find out or get facts about. Then we have what we call conceptual research, which is generally used by philosophers or thinkers to develop new concepts or reinterpret others. So, you know, when you have a concept, it's just a way of trying to describe why a phenomenon occurs the way it does. However, if these concepts are proven, then they become a theory. And when you talk about a theory, this is already something that is justified. Whether tested, the outcome remains the same, even if you test it over a period of time. So at times you get that to be able to disapprove this kind of theories that have already been put, a good example. Right now, if you're working within if you're found within decision-making space, there is this narrative that puts our younger colleagues or friends or our children, like they say, oh, the Gen Zs are generally difficult people. So for somebody to assume, then there must have been some persistent investigation giving you the results occurring in the same way. So at times, to demystify some of these things, people have to conduct research so that some of these narratives are further unpacked or are best interpreted, because that might not be the situation as it is. So this occurs, especially if you're not so sure about the way some of our development projects, for example, you hear, oh, these communities are difficult one. Anytime, well, they're pastoralists, for example, they need water. But when we take water, the uptake of water becomes a challenge. The communities keep moving. So maybe there's already a narrative that their problem, perhaps just culture and a way of life. And to be able to disapprove or approve or add more emphasis in terms of being able to understand these people better, at times we conduct things such as this conceptual research. Then, of course, we have empirical research, which is the one we do based on data that has already been done by other people. In most cases, some people have already undertaken different research initiatives, and you're using those different research initiatives to better understand or come up with conclusions in regards to why a phenomenon is occurring the way it is. So in most cases, you hear people say empirical review, whereby you look at who has done certain, just a minute. So, so this apparently is going to constitute some significant part of your chapter 2, where we will be looking at the works you have been able to do and the works other people have been able to do, and lay reference to inform the results of your study. I'm sure even you, when you have concluded your works in terms of research, then it's placed in a repository, perhaps you've published, other people will be able to rely upon the works that you have done to also make reference or infer other studies with almost similar characteristics. So all these are different types of research, and I believe they go way, way beyond that. So just for these purposes, we'll just brief you on why exactly do we do research. At times we do research just to review and synthesize existing knowledge. At times we do it to investigate situations and come up with solutions to problems. At times we do it to explore and analyze more generalized issues, like there's these things which keep occurring, and you need to better understand them, even within our own home areas. We need to do research. And I mean, and you know, research should not be that complicated as people might want to make it seem. Human beings are curious. And by the mere nature of you being curious, then means that you'll always want to make it a point of inquiry to better understand your environment and why things are occurring the way they are in your environment. So research, of course, can also be done to be able to create, to maybe construct or create new procedures and systems, because perhaps you have these policies, you have these strategies within government or within your own institutions, whether HR, whether they're administrative or operational, and they're just not working. You're not getting the best results. So I think it is at times prudent for you to do an inquiry so that you better understand why are these procedures not working, or so that you can craft new procedures to make your systems more efficient. That's why at times people say that audit also constitutes part and parcel of research processes. So also to explain new phenomenons. Colleagues, please mute. I know some of us are still transacting on the background. Please mute, and the rest of us can continue, please. All right. So at times, this also helps you in explaining new phenomena. You remember during the time of COVID-19, nobody knew what COVID-19 was, at least within the context of Kenya and Africa, and perhaps it was called a novel virus. And when this happened, people were not so sure how they would be able to respond to it or who would survive this. I remember even the Gates, Melinda Gates saying that it will wipe out most of Africans. And the white race, I think, was more supreme and would probably survive this. And that was not the case. So perhaps there are different studies that people are doing right now to better understand why is it that a big fragment of the world population were impacted on while others were not impacted on by this particular phenomenon. So it also tries to explain who is likely to be impacted on by certain public policy, and how are they going to be influenced by this policy? How will they respond to this policy, or even an activity or a strategy? You know, even as much as today, all of us are required to pay certain taxes as a matter of public good. You know, one would just inquire which fragment of society would be impacted on by certain tax regimes. How will they be impacted on? So anytime you introduce anything new, I think it is only fair to undertake an impact analysis to be able to really understand this population that you're dealing with. How were they before? When you introduce this intervention, what has changed and what is likely to be able to change in the near future? So even as we explain these phenomenon, we try and look at it from a whole shelf life point of view, from the inception of any development, in the middle, when you're already implementing this development, and for posterity to be able to understand what will be the future of certain interventions and how they would relate with certain populations in terms of how they occur. And research helps us do a lot of this, including generate new knowledge. So we don't need to really wait for a phenomenon to occur, but for us to better plan, better prepare, and better cushion ourselves and manage our risks, whether operational risks or the risk related to any intervention we have or development or policy or decisions we are about to make. I think in most cases, you have to undertake some kind of preliminary assessment or understanding of this. I'm sure some of us, even as we talk, are currently, it's the World Cup season. And many people are perhaps gambling. I know if I say people are gambling here, most of us would not agree to that. But anytime there are uncertainties and you want to be sure about where to place your odds if you're a football fan, then you have to do your preliminary research to understand the last time this kind of teams met, what are your likelihood outcomes, or how are these events likely uh, to result, who is likely to, and you see every single day in our lives, we actually undertake some research. It doesn't matter the scope of that research, but it is a point of inquiry to be able to better understand and improve our systems, our livelihoods, and also the way we are doing things. So at times you might do research for one activity, but you end up finding that the result constitutes all the above what we have talked about. So I think when it comes to decision making, then research, of course, is used to come up with and improve government policy systems, including economic systems. It's used to be able to understand the relationships between different entities and answer different social problems. Well, in your case here, you might want to do research because, well, it is a requirement for you. But then I strongly believe that during this process, we will be looking to address societal issues rather than being able to just meet this target of research as a requirement for you here, but it should be something that is able to improve how you function within your workspaces. At times we do professional research here to be able to use that as a source of livelihood. And I know some of you are researchers who do consultancies, and you also work in this field, but at times we also use it to be able to understand or get an insight on really new ideas, and being able to understand how things function. At times research, we do this for decision making to become creative so that we have new solutions and to make our work easier, but also to be able to analyze or improve our intellectual being in terms of understanding new theories, coming up with new solutions, and also being able to further or better our day-to-day activities. So I think you will get an opportunity to read some of these things. And I believe that at this level in which you are, most of us here have already participated in different forms of research or continuously undertake a lot of research. So I think you'll be able to work in teams and inspire each other, remind each other on how this is done. And this is going to take a lot of team effort. However, even before we get to that aspect, we need to remember that there are certain stages of the research process. And one is you must establish a general field of interest. So you will find yourselves in groups. Unfortunately, this class has about 100 and almost 160 or 150 something persons. So we will put you in groups of between 13 and 12. So this is going to be a group activity. So even within your group, you have to agree upon what field of interest you'd like to actually delve into and investigate. In some cases, one of you would perhaps, or a group of you would perhaps want to look at a current phenomenon that is occurring within your institution. Could be something happening within public space. But all this you will do in discussion with your supervisor. So what we suggest at this particular time is that once you have been put in your groups, then you will come up with 3 topics, 3 research topics, which are workable, which are agreed upon within your groups. And once you've come up with this, then these topics will be discussed between you and your respective supervisors, which we are going to allocate to you by the end of this day. There's already a list out, and I think Doreen will be able to share. So once you have done that, if you've looked at your 3 topics, I would like to employ you to at least take some time and try and have a brief understanding about those topical areas, so that before you go in and start doing research about them, they should be those that you're able to actually understand or already think or conceptualize the whole process of how it is likely to be done. And during this time, you'd be able to look at who did similar studies, which kind of research methodology are you likely to use? Is this a topic which is applicable within the context in which you are undertaking your study? A good example is we don't expect you to go so deeply into, let's say, clinical related research, and yet that is a different sphere that you might not be able to undertake within the short confines of time that we have here. Another one would be perhaps some people would pick a topic on mental health, but then you're talking about the clinical aspects of mental health, which even within the amount of time you're given, you might not be able to achieve, or it requires more technical expertise, maybe from people in the medical field, or from a population. You want to collect data from a population which is not very easy to access. So this is the time that you should be thinking about, and it will help you filter out amongst the 3 topics that you picked, which one is the most viable to use. Then after that, you narrow your ideas. Now, in this case, when you're narrowing your ideas, some people talk about conceptualization. But if I were you, what I would do is develop a conceptual framework which helps you start thinking around which are the variables you're looking at, uh, how do they interact with each other, how do they then lead to the outcome variable, what is influencing what. So even just a diagrammatic expression, as you're still doing your discussions with your colleagues, or trying to read a little bit about this, a conceptual framework would help you think around the entire research process without you necessarily digging too deep into this research. So once you do that, I think you do not have enough time. In some cases, we would have asked you to do a concept, then based on the concept, we'll be able to approve this, and then subject it to some rigorous review. Then you're able to give us a proposal later on. But I think at this particular time, you will be able to have this conversation with your supervisors, so that even as you develop your chapters 1, 2, and 3, which in most cases are perceived to be your proposal, then you don't lag behind. But then by that time, you will already have workable topics, which the sources of data are those you can easily achieve. And I'd like to just caution you that whenever you're narrowing your ideas here, or you're looking at your topics, or picking up your research topics, the ones you want to work with, I think the safest thing is usually you also think around, where are you going to get data from? Is that data accessible? Because I think that is the only way you'll be able to achieve and get this research done within the short time in which you have. And I know some of you will say, no, time was a limitation. But put yourself in this situation. You are in your institution, there is a crisis, and decisions have to be made real time. How much time do you have to investigate, put a point of inquiry, and come up with strategies or possible remedies to whatever is occurring within your institution? So try and treat it as somebody who wants to do a rapid assessment. Within the shortest time, you pick well, crisp topics which are researchable and within the context in which you're working or operating. So we are not going to limit you to picking research topics from the ones which you see in the timetable, but you could pick any other topic about general policy and what is occurring within the country. And I think that will add a lot of value to you in terms of this. So don't, if you have somebody, a good example would be, if you wanted to collect data from DoD, Department of Defense, and this is sensitive data, and you have no access to the Department of Defense. So you start thinking around access to data, because which method would you appropriately use to be able to collect data from DoD, even if you had access to them, and the nature of investigation that you want to make. Perhaps you want to go, we've just come from the maandamanos the other day, and you want to collect data about, let's say, the handling of the protest, and the persons you're targeting to get this kind of information from is probably the National Police Service or some of our security apparatus. And this is sensitive information, and that's what your inquiry is looking at. And if you're not from that field, you'll most likely not get information from them. So let us also think about which topics are workable, where can we get data with ease, so that we are also able to conclude this process within the stipulated time that is there. After that, you'll be expected, of course, to prepare your tools and choose the most appropriate tools to be able to collect your data. Nowadays, we have a lot of ways of collecting data. You could have physical questionnaires, telephone conversations to be able to collect data. At times, we use things like the electronic media to be able to collect certain data. But in some cases, you might find yourself in a situation where you only want to rely on secondary data, which has already been collected by somebody else. And for you, it is about analysis. A good example is if you're trying to think around maybe how inflation is impacting on, let's say, an X part of the economy. Perhaps you might not require to collect primary data on that, but you can rely upon reports that are already existing and be able to model that data, analyze it, and be able to interpret and give us the results. So this process is not unique. It undertakes the same exact research process that we do, especially for the social sciences, of political social sciences in this case. So after that, you'll be able to come up with your drafts, but all this will be guided by your supervisors up to the end where you will make your final submissions. And we will still be having those conversations between ourselves so that you can best give put your best foot forward and get the best results for this. So I think one thing that needs to be clear is that your research must be purposeful. It must be very, very clearly defined. Why are you doing your research? What is it about? What processes are there? So all these have to be well articulated. So I believe that you must have a work plan, even as you work in your groups. And those work plans are the things that you will use to see how you engage amongst yourselves, to time yourselves to the timelines that have been set out within the timetable. And I'm sure there's, if you go through your timetable towards the tail end before the week just before your examination, that is the week which you will be making your presentations. So you must ensure that whatever work plan you have, it should align with that timetable to the extent that on the last week before your exam, you should have concluded and made presentations in relation to this study. So even as you continue, ensure that you have high ethical standards being put in place. If there are any limitations, you must reveal them. Yeah, and I hope time will not be a limitation because we already know how much time we have to undertake this research. So we can pick those ones that have very minimal financial implications or implications on time, because the amount of time you have is quite limiting. Then, of course, we will really look at how you analyze your data, the quality of results that you're going to portray after analyzing, how you report those results, then how you interpret those results, what is the policy implication of your research in terms of its findings. We'll be able to look at that. And then how you also conclude and recommend for policy interventions based on your actual results. So we expect to see quite some good work coming from you, and something that is likely to elicit a good reading material that makes a lot of sense. So The research content is very generic like any other, and I have provided to you the list of what each chapter must contain. Like you must have a background, you must have a clear problem statement, and your problem statement must first elicit what is the ideal situation, then what is the current situation, and all this in line with what are other scenarios that are there within that problem statement, and what does it mean for your research. So those are things that you need to clearly give us. We need to see your objectives, whether you have when you have objectives, whether you have research questions or a hypothesis. Well, this might differ because there are some persons who believe, okay, in research that you could have both of them. Personally, I think when you have research questions, then you don't require a hypothesis. You can use either for your study. So we require you to give us justification why you're doing this study, and this must be very clear. Then we expect a conceptual framework. However, about the conceptual framework, in chapter 1, the conceptual framework will just be an overview of how your variables are interacting with each other. However, this will just be a summary. But the actual conceptual framework should actually appear on your chapter 2 after you have undertook your review and you have firmed up your theoretical framework and also been able to look at or understand how best those variables occur, whether independent, dependent, or intervening. Then we will require you to have an actual conceptual framework well described and elicited within your chapter 2. In chapter 1, you can just have a small narrative of what it entails, but it has to be there in chapter 2. Then, of course, operational terms and limitations of your study. So if you feel
Am I the only one who has lost the teacher?
Even me.
The teacher has lost us, not the.
We can't get him anymore.
I can continue.
Let us be patient as we wait for him maybe to rejoin the session. Thank
Or
you.
I continue from where he stopped.
Eric,
I won't go
let us
wrong.
be patient.
Let's be good students.
Is this also a research question?
It is a commercial break.
You may pick that in line with the online training.
Class rep, let me ask, when will the questions be posted for 302 for us to proceed to the third module?
Good afternoon, Daktari. I don't have answer right now, but I believe I will try to communicate to them. There's somebody who has reached out. We are going to talk after this class. So once we
Okay.
talk and I have answer, I will respond in the group. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
But again, we are able to access the next module, that is research. So I don't think the missing of the discussion will restrict us from proceeding to the next module, which is research project.
You're saying that you're able to access the next module?
Which is this is what we have discussed today.
It's
The
not
research.
sorry, Frederick. It's not the next module, but you're able to access this specific one that we are doing, research project.
Research project. Okay, all right.
If you're active in the WhatsApp group, you'll be able to see that I had downloaded the material there and I've shared them on your WhatsApp. So please check the material on your WhatsApp for your personal reading. Thank you.
Yes, for that is 308. Yes, that's the open. I was just asking the next one because they are scheduled to be done per week, if I'm not wrong.
308 is the next one. Actually, what the research project is the next one. The 308 will open. Each module has a date when it is opening. Research was to open on 29th, which is today.
Okay.
Apologies, colleagues. I don't know. I lost you at one particular time. Sorry. So can I just briefly continue? Then you can continue the conversation.
Okay, carry on.
Okay. Poleni sana for that mishap. Okay. I think we're back. So I think for your literature review, then you'll be able to briefly discuss what other people have been able to do and how it contributes to your study. So even as you do this, we expect that at the end of it all, you must have some gaps. Perhaps a summary of your literature and your findings about the review and how those impact on your study or influence your study or what they will contribute towards your study. And I think that will be for that case. Then, of course, we will be expecting you to have your chapter 3, which will be on methodology. And of course, here we'll be looking at what approaches you have been able to use or that you're likely to use. And of course, we'll be looking at why are you collecting that data? What is that data about? Where are you collecting it from? Or where are you deriving that data from? And also, how are you doing it? Which methodologies you're using to be able to get that data? But also how you will be able to analyze that data and give the desired results. Of course, your methodology should be able to have a reflection on how you're going to be able to achieve all the objectives that you had set up there. And just to highlight this, the more your objectives, the more I think kind of analysis will anticipate from you and more results. However, from my perspective, and I think you can agree within your own context on the kind of study you're doing with your supervisor on how many objectives do you require and the nature of those, of course, those objectives, and how you will then be able to use different methods and approaches to be able to arrive at findings in relation to those, including analysis. So one question I would like to give you is that some people are usually tempted to add a recommendation as an objective to recommend policy or to give or to derive policy recommendations, those kind of things in the objectives. I think in my opinion, those are things that should not be there. Your recommendations should not be seen at that level. So we expect that you'll also be able to attach the kind of questionnaires that you use. Whether you use the questionnaire, you use the checklist, and be able to clearly articulate how you used those or how you used those to collect or get data from your study area, those will have to be clearly indicated. So, of course, we expect to see your research design, what is your population, how did you arrive at your sample size, how did you do your sampling in terms of procedure, how did you collect those data, and how did you analyze, as well as an interpretation of your data. So ideally, I've also, and I'll share with you, when I share with you this, you'll be able to see some of the general just rules for designing a questionnaire, so that you don't have to apply all of them, but you can pick those that suit your work, so that you're able to come up with a better questionnaire, and you're able to collect data for those of you who are likely to do this. Yes,
Anton.
Is it Makunda? Yes, sir.
Anton.
Yes, thank you. We are not able to see the screen and would really request that the sharing be done. Thank you.
How many of you cannot see the screen?
We're not seeing.
All of us.
All of us.
Not now. Okay, let me stop sharing
All
and
of us.
share again, because I've been sharing. Let me just stop and reshare again. Okay. Now, are you able to see the screen?
It's loading.
Not
I
yet.
can't see.
Still blank. It's not yet. You cannot still yet see the screen.
Okay, let me share my entire.
It is blank.
It's blank. Let me just share my entire. Let me just share the entire page. Share. Then, now, are you able to see?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Is it literature review?
It's blank.
It's still blank.
Yes.
Yeah.
Give me a minute. Let me log out and log in again. Then I think perhaps it will be able to show. Let me just log out.
Dennis Kibuchi, your hand is up. Do you want to say something? Stella, your hand is also up.
Sorry, I've
Abiba
dropped.
Osman. Okay. Abiba Osman, please, if you want to say something, let us know. Stella Mumanyi. Angelolo.
The screen is still black.
It's okay. He is going to log in again to try to share the screen.
Nani yako Malindi nimsalimie? Niko Malindi na sijui Malindi hapa vizuri.
Hiyo utafanya baadaye.
Baadaye mwalimu atakuwa amerudi.
Iko sawa?
Yeah, we can now see.
It is perfect.
It's clear now.
Yes, it's now clear. The screen is shared, but we can't hear you.
Now you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Now you can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Though miniaturized.
Though?
It's okay now.
It's well.
Okay. 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 Sorry for that. Okay. Yeah. So I said we'll be able to share this with you. And the stopgap measure that you have is that you have your supervisors to guide you through this entire process. So I would like to encourage you as much as possible to rely on them. And, you know, in every research activity, there's always a learning curve and it's always a learning process. So just keep consulting with them. Nothing stops you from consulting beyond the walls or the confines of the school. What really matters is that we are able to come up with a good research that can stand the test of time, can be validated, and that can actually come up with good recommendations that can be tried and tested. So all these notes will be available to you so that you just use them either for this purpose or for other purposes. And we also have some aspects. Okay, now quickly to chapter 4, what we expect from you are well synthesized findings and perhaps discussions. So this will actually, I don't think we have an actual standard for how you want to do this, because in most cases, some people combine their results and their discussions, or have separate chapters, not chapters for findings and also for discussions. But I think for the purposes of this, what we anticipate from you is that you will give us your findings. You'll be able to interpret what those findings mean. And if there is any other discussion in relation to those findings, then I think they will be done at that particular time. So we don't expect a different chapter or section that has your discussions, but I think if you combine them, then that would help a lot in being able to read your work and also being able to understand this. So I think some aspects that I might have omitted here is what is the policy implication just before your conclusion? What is your the policy implication of your study? How do your findings relate to any policy outcome? So I think that is you as a practitioner, or a team of practitioners, especially in public policy space, these are things you really need to think about and should be clearly indicated within the confines of your document. Then, of course, you will be able to draw your conclusions and recommendations. I suggest that anytime you're concluding, it is important that as you conclude, drawing reference from your results, your conclusions should actually mirror a conclusion of your research question or your objective. If your study has met that aspect within your objective in which you sought to understand. So it would be important to know that if you have perhaps 4 or 3 objectives, then we are able to clearly see what is your conclusions in regards to those objectives, as they are not one generalized conclusion. And also recommendations, I think, should be drawn in relation to your research findings. At times people are tempted to give us very generic recommendations I think they could add some weight to your work, but at times, if you confine them to the context in which you did your study, then that would add a lot of value. And this would be, I think, the end of this presentation, at least for now. So you don't need to worry about all this, because we are still going to, at the end of this day, ensure that each and every group have a supervisor to take them through this process. So is there any question up to here? Sorry, I'm trying to go back to, oh yes. Yes, Nathan. Can I have Nathan, then Judy? Yes? Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, I can see Nathan's hand is up. Nathan Shionga? Or Judy?
I can hear
I
you.
think the hands have been up since the
Yes,
lesson
you
started.
can hear me, but your hands are up. So I'm not so sure whether you want to ask something.
The
No,
hands
my
have
hand
been
is
up
not.
since the lesson started. I think they are not aware that the hands are up.
Oh, they're not aware. Okay. I hope they are in the meeting, though. You know, their hands can be up, but they are somewhere in Upper Hill, shuttling between different buildings.
Mbona wachoki?
Sawa. So is there any question before I share this list, which will still be shared with Doreen? The one that will be shared with Doreen will have the actual contacts of your supervisors. Yes, Joel. Joel, I saw your hand. Or should I proceed by just sharing the list so that at least you can have a snippet of it, and then after that, the other conversations, because I'll be joining the main WhatsApp group that you're in. I'll be able to see any conversation that is there and still communicate.
Okay, sure.
Beyond
Yes,
this.
please share the list.
Okay, so stop sharing, and let me share this other one. Okay. How do you access today's notes? I think they will be posted on the WhatsApp group. Yeah. I think you'll be able to get them from there. They'll be posted on the WhatsApp group. Are you able to see this list?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this list will also be shared with you. And don't worry about the highlighted numbers that are down there, because I think I don't know, the system kind of didn't capture some of those numbers correctly as you had input them. So we will still be able to share a list that has some which are corrected, some which are not corrected. Those individuals, like I see, Doreen Kawira, Mbwiri, you will be able to call the convener, and the convener of this group is Mohammed Hassan. So for each and every group, ladies and gentlemen, the first name on that list, like Mohammed Hassan, will be the tentative leader or governor of that group until after he has convened. He will create a WhatsApp group which will include the members of his group. So anybody who belongs to that group, you will be able to contact him to allow as Mohammed, just for purposes of this, to use you for that purpose, and then you will be able to agree whoever becomes the team lead up to then. The next group, of course, we have Angela Awino,